Namaste, everyone. My name is Ritvij Hole. I am the International Youth Coordinator and member of the International Leadership Team for Hindu Heritage Month this year. Over the past month, Hindu Heritage Month, the second annual one, has featured hundreds of events led by people from all five continents. If you joined us last night, you were able to see many of these countries to the east of India, including Bharat, Indonesia, and Australia. And for those of you who are joining us today, we would love to show you what is happening on the Western side of the world. And so, with that, I would like to humbly welcome all of you to this year's Western closing ceremonies. We will start with a short message from Jaiji, our global HHM coordinator. Jaiji, please take it away.
Thank you. Namaste and welcome everyone. Um, it really is an honor for me to be addressing not only our panelists on the screen, but also people in the audience who joined through various social media platforms that we shared with before. I apologize for my voice. It's been dying for the last few days. Hopefully, you can still make out what I'm saying. um, so, the year 2021 will go down in Indian diaspora's history or Hindu diaspora's history as the beginning of Hindu Heritage Month movement, an idea that came out of a very simple thought process. Now, what was that thought process? It was that Hindu community worldwide is more than 1 billion strong. We have a very rich culture and spiritual heritage. We proudly celebrate it individually, with the family members, with our friends, and even in groups. October is the month when a lot of our very important festivals come together. So why don't we recognize October as the epicenter of our major traditions and call it Hindu Heritage Month and celebrate it together globally as one family? That was the simple idea. Starting from that, kernel of an idea, Hindu Heritage Month has gone on to become a trend-setting international movement in just 2 years, not even 2 years. Last year alone, we had more than 100 organizations join us as partners, primarily from the US, but also some from as far away as Thailand. And among them, they held close to 100 celebration events to recognize October as Hindu Heritage Month. In the United States, we had more than half the states, 25 or 26 states out of 50, and more than 50 cities that rose in unison to recognize the many contributions that Hindu civilization has made to the world at large. It was a truly proud moment, but that's past. What is happening this year? This year, it is gratifying to note that the global Hindu community has taken this initiative to an entirely new level. This year, we have close to 180 organizations from 15 countries, all the way from New Zealand to Norway, join us and take part in Hindu Heritage Month celebrations, holding close to 200 events between them. Political recognitions are pouring in from various states and cities every single day. Now, I could talk about what is, many things that are different in 2022 Hindu Heritage Month versus 2021. But the one that I really want to focus on is what we see here on the screen. You, the Hindu youth leaders from many different countries, collaborated and joined this movement as critical part of this movement. That to me is the single biggest achievement. Not only those of you who are on the screen here, but also those who were with us last night from the eastern part of the globe. So let me repeat this for the audience one more time. Anything that you hear and see today in these closing ceremonies has been fully organized by our leaders of our next generation, our youth, our future. And that, to me, is truly gratifying achievement of Hindu Heritage Month this year. There are many more, but I think that's the one I like to highlight. We also organized a series of webinars in the month of October to showcase the way in which our next generation is enlivening their heritage, not only in their personal lives, but also in their professional lives. In fact, there is one webinar going on right now that should be ending in about half an hour. So um, it may sound like a cliche, but the world, such as it is your inheritance. Whatever my generation has done with or to this world is going to recede in the past, is already receding in the past, and you will slowly be taking control of it. You will be the ones who will take the center stage for the Hindu world. Along with that, of course, inheritance, along with inheritance comes responsibilities to hold onto and carry on our traditions, including Hindu Heritage Month, or change them for the better. In fact, we expect our next generation to change it for the better. We have some ideas, we did something, now it's yours to do what you can do with it. Now, question I think we have to ask ourselves is, what is so important about Hindu Heritage Month? Why are we doing it? So the first thing I like to say, there are 4 or 5 points I just like to make very quickly. The first thing I like to say is it's a collaborative initiative of numerous Hindu organizations to raise the awareness and celebrate our true ethos and culture of Hindu civilization. That's one. The second part I think is also very important. In fact, all of us here are, out of India. I mean, we're living in countries that our forefathers, were not from. So we are the fastest growing immigrant community in the world, bar none. While people know us through, professional spaces, we have done very well in the professional world, and we are well recognized and respected there. Our adopted societies do not know much about us, in terms of what the values that we, hold, and our culture and our traditions. Hindu Heritage Month provides us an opportunity and initiative to talk about these things and let our adopted societies know who we are, what our values are. And I think it's very, very important that we break those interfacial barriers. Hindu Heritage Month is also an opportunity for us to interact with our elected representatives and educate them about, where we come from, what we stand for, what our contributions to the world are. I think that is also becoming very, very clear that it's important for our identity to protect and project our identity. It is very important that we connect with our elected representatives, and Hindu Heritage Month gives you that opportunity to do that. Of course, building collaboration and cohesiveness and solidarity among the disparate Hindu groups all over the world is a wonderful thing. If we can do that through this medium, then I think all the power to it. We should do it. Finally, when we come together in large numbers and celebrate something together, our shared heritage, the message that goes out to the world is very powerful. We exist. We're alive. We hold these values, and we're strong together. So those are the reasons why we are doing Hindu Heritage Month, and I think it's important for our next generation to pick up from here and take it to the next level. Now, what is the vision that we have for future? I'd like to share just 2 or 3 points, and then I will close my my talk. Hindu Heritage Month is a movement with strong momentum. We must capture this momentum and build it into something very, very tangible. To that end, let me just share two or three things. First of all, this year we had 15 countries join uh, the celebration of Hindu Heritage Month. Next year, let's make it at least 30. More would be better, but let's try to make it at least 30. And I like to see much more representation, planning, organizing from our next generation next year. I don't want to set a numerical goal, but I will be connecting with, we'll be trying to connect with some of you offline and talk about how we can make it happen. And the last bit, and this may sound like a big target, but I can assure you it's achievable. And that is, we would like to see declaration of October as Hindu Heritage Month from United Nations by 2030. That it will require a lot of work, a lot of planning, but I think we are up to it and we can do it. And just imagine the achievement that, the statement that would make to the world at large. So with that, thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to the enlightening conversations from here on. Namaste.
Dhanyawad, Jai. It's always great to hear your words of wisdom. And in fact, I wanted to just touch upon one of them that you mentioned, how so much of this was organized by the youth. I'd say in many of these countries, it was really youth that were our initial contact that solely took the lead. I mean, if you look in South Africa, it was Chetanji and Jyotirika ji that really, took up that banner. If you look in, Guyana, it was Deodat ji that was the only one over there that took that banner. If you had the opportunity to go to the east, you would have seen Dvijaji and Rituji take it up in Indonesia and Australia, respectively, Bhavyaji in the UK and all of that. I wanted to bring all of these people on the stage at one point to be able to let everyone see the full, diversity of the Hindu community and a Hindu youth leadership all at once. But due to time zone restrictions, it doesn't seem that's possible. So I've gotten the next best thing. I'd like to introduce all of you via YouTube to some of our Australian leaders. That way you can see just how much work they are doing. So here we have a message from Aditya Depande. I will let play now.
Namaste. I am Aditya Rudra Pandey from Adelaide, South Australia, and I am a committee member of Hindu Youth Australia Adelaide. Over the past month, Hindu communities from a wide range of nations have gathered to celebrate several events. Hindu Youth Australia, South Australia, celebrated Diwali last weekend. We gathered with more than 70 people to celebrate the holy day of Diwali. Our celebration started off with diya paintings and rangoli making, which got people of all ages involved in it. Following on from that, we also had a Kahoot quiz based on Diwali and Hindu Heritage Month, which got super competitive and everyone enjoyed it. After that, we had a karaoke session with the mic being passed around and everyone getting a chance to sing along to spiritual bhajans. This was then followed by an aarti for Ganeshji and Lakshmiji, after which everyone lit diyas and had an immense amount of fun with their fuljaris. The penultimate program in the event was an award ceremony for best dressed people, both male and female. To conclude our Diwali event, everyone had some delicious and fresh home cooked food prepared by our lovely volunteers. Overall, Hindu Heritage Month was a massive success for us as a community, and we also wish everyone a happy and prosperous Diwali from Australia. Dhanyavad.
Yes, Dhanyawad, Aditya ji. It's always great to see just the broad diversity of our Hindu community, and especially for them, they really started all of this up in only the few recent years. So it's good to see how much progress they're making fast, and the future of our Hindu heritage is truly bright in Australia and all over the world. So we wanted to show you that a bit from the West as well. So with that, I would like to invite up for a discussion on Hindu values, Bhavya Shahji, our coordinator in the United Kingdom, Chetan Yamlal ji, a rising Hindu youth leader in the UK, and Nayan Kaul ji, an intern at Hindu Pact, to join me on a small panel. Now, Hindu values, all of these people, they come from very different countries, probably Chetanji, your diaspora is likely the oldest in many ways. You guys were taken by the British from your motherland, and a lot of you were forced to work in very poor conditions, and yet you were able to rise your way up to the top. In the US, we're all kind of new people that came in the last, maybe the 60s at the earliest. And in the UK, you kind of see a mix of both of those, right? You see people that came a long time ago, you see people coming in now. So we have a very diverse and, interesting set to talk with. So let's maybe start with Chetanji. If you could introduce yourself and talk about what Hindu values you feel are most important to you and how they affected your experience growing up in South Africa, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Rutvij Bhai. Namaste all, and to all listeners today. Firstly, it's a privilege to be here, and on behalf of South Africa, it's an honor to participate in Hindu Heritage Month. I think, as JG had mentioned earlier, as Hindus, we have such a rich tradition that we need to be proud of. And I think coming together like this, in platforms like this, and sharing these experiences, it's so important for us to keep our culture strong. And as we go into the future, especially as the youth, I think more and more it's becoming important that in this world that we find ourselves in, that our values and culture doesn't get lost. And I think it's platforms like this that help to re-emphasize this. So a little bit about myself. I'm probably a fifth generation South African. Been here for many years. I've born here. As you mentioned, probably the oldest group of Indians outside of India, where most of our forefathers came to these lands in the 1860s, and again brought over as essentially slaves and indentured laborers. And when you look at what the Hindu community has achieved in South Africa over these last few generations, it's really remarkable. Coming here with basically nothing, suffering lots of stress by the British and being subjected to terrible conditions, we've really risen up in society, from politics to education to business to professionals to schooling to all aspects of society. We've really seen Hindu people and, in fact, the broader Indian community really rise up. And I think it gives us a lot of pride as a culture and as a group of people to see what we've achieved despite the challenges. So personally, for me, the values of perseverance, I think, the values of having faith, of, believing in having a higher power that guides us, having that sense of where we come from. And India is still our motherland. It's where the root of all of our traditions and values do come from. So still maintaining that link and feeling that link, but then also navigating this new dynamic and this new world that we live in. And for me, that's probably an interesting discussion point as well, how we have gone about doing this. But for me, I think perseverance, faith, and just believing in ourselves, I think that's helped us really come to the top echelons of society.
Definitely. It's really remarkable how much we've been able to rise to our values. Bhavya, same question, just towards the UK.
Yes, namaste. Lovely to be a part of this panel and a part of Hindu Heritage Month. I think the UK is very diverse in its population of Hindus and Indians. You'd see a mass migration around the 1940s, 1950s, post-independence. And even now, we see waves of new migrants from India coming over, especially in the IT field, but also education. So we have a real mix of, your first generation, second generation, third generations, and now we're just about touching our fourth generations in the UK. And so what that means for us is a couple of things that Chetanji actually definitely mentioned is, what it means to be a Hindu, right, in a British context. Right? How can we as Hindus have our values and live by our values, but also actively contribute towards British society? For a lot of us, Britain has been a home for now 3 generations. And that means, Britain's our home. Yes, we have this connection to Bharat. Our values have come from there. Our dharmas come from there. You sort of call it a punya bhumi, right? That's where we seek our inspiration. But our karma bhumi is definitely Britain and the UK. And so really it's how do we use our values that we get taught from a young age and the sanskars we grow up with to make our environment more dharmic, right? In a sense, you can say more sustainable. How can our Hindu values contribute to British society so that we can make Britain more sustainable? And that's a very selfless thing that we should endeavor to do. It's not about pushing the Hindu agenda forward or this or that. It's really about how can we elevate the status of everyone in society together, and what are the solutions to that? And you know, I firmly believe that our Hindu values are some of the solutions that we need, especially if we're looking at global warming, mental health, especially within students. A lot of things, if we look back into our culture, into our sanskars, into our values and teachings, a lot of the answers are there. It's just about we have to rediscover them, if you like it.
Definitely. I think yeah, Hindu values all over the world are really an answer to these problems. It was something that we brought up in the last panel as well. And so Nayanji, I mean, if you want to also introduce yourself and maybe also respond a bit to Bhavyaji's point, please go ahead.
Definitely. Namaste Rituji, JG, everyone. I'm very grateful that I'm here to represent the United States. So I suppose I'll start by introducing myself. My parents originate from Kashmir, and they obviously had to move to India to escape violence there. And then they emigrated to New York. So it's sort of like the quintessential American dream, right? They moved in the 90s or 80s, and my parents found a way to have a life here, raise a family, keep in touch with their community. So I'm very grateful for this country, for the opportunities it has given not only me and my family, but my fellow Hindus, right? So I think America is home to like 3.5 million Hindus, right? So it's a very sizable population. So when I'm asked to talk about, Western values and Hindu values, well, I feel like we view it often as two different things, right? There's Western values and there's Hindu values. But the way I see it, they're actually quite similar, right? So Hinduism is based on like dharma, right? And these Hindu dharmic values are do right by your fellow man, be honest, don't be hypocritical, follow one's good conscience. And the way I see it, and maybe it's just my high school history class talking, but American values, like Western values, like life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, these are inalienable rights that our country gives us. So in terms of that sense, when we're talking about Hindu values and Western values, I don't see it as a two-sided story. I see it as quite a similar thing. So as per my personal experience, I'm in a great Kashmiri community, right? I have people I can look up to, like my parents and my aunts and my uncles. And, something that always comes to mind when I'm thinking of my experiences, it's like, the smell of like rusk and chai at a party and all these wonderful things. So ultimately, when we're talking about Hindu values and Western values, I just want to make people understand or share my belief that they're both quite similar. We don't have to view it as two different things.
I think that's a fair point, but it's rather interesting that you bring this up. Throughout history, both within India, right? I mean, you mentioned the Kashmir Pandit exodus, where 500,000 Kashmir Pandits had to leave the Indian state of Kashmir to go to a different part of India simply because their values weren't accepted by the Islamic majority. And even in the UK, just as recently as what we saw in Leicester, where Hindu values, there was an aggressive attack on Hindus and Hindu values in that society. So I guess the question now becomes, how do we take such aggression that's come, when we try to show our Hindu values to the world, and how do we use the Hindu values to not only overcome this aggression for ourselves, but for everyone to make a better society? I'll just leave it open. If anyone
So maybe I can start, Rutviji. I think at the core of it, our philosophy as Hindus, I think, is very much tailored to peace and non-violence. I think if you look at the historical figures of the past, if you look at traditionally how we have dealt with violence, I think it's something where there is a lot of wisdom in our scriptures in terms of how this is dealt. There's actually a very beautiful fable by Paramahamsa Sri Ramakrishna, who speaks about the cobra, and it's the moral of the story, to not go into it, but it's about hiss but don't bite, where it's about, it doesn't mean that one must be stepped over, but there's a way to still be strong, to still be courageous, even in the face of violence or fear. And I think even if you look at figures such as Swami Vivekananda, who I think is a role model to all of us as Hindus, and I think as Hindus, we all know Swamiji. Swamiji only speaks of strength, and he always speaks of being a lion amongst men and being strong. And with that, it brings us a sense of strength, but that strength does not have to be violent. And I think that's the key distinction maybe between how, from a Hindu lens, if we view conflict versus perhaps a Western lens. And I think there's a lot of wisdom there for us as a people to take away from.
Mhm. Definitely. I think it's a good point to quote American President Theodore Roosevelt. We used to say, "Speak softly but carry a big stick," right? So I think it's fairly similar. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
I just want to build off what Chetanji was saying. So he was saying like hiss but don't bite, right? I think that's a very interesting statement because for much of India's history, like Mahatma Gandhi, the father of India, India was based on a very peaceful philosophy. He had his peaceful salt marches. He told everyone not to engage in violence. And so when I see sort of India's foreign policy after sort of the 40s and 50s, it's one of sort of compliance. It's not it's not defining itself. But something I'm very grateful to see right now, more recently, is that India is becoming much more assertive. It's become willing to show we are a country 1.2 billion strong, and we have all these people, and we are going to use what we know and what we have to share. We're going to share with the world what we know and we have. We aren't going to be compliant. We're going to be assertive and share our values and beliefs. So it's something I'm very grateful for the current government of India, what they're doing in terms of that.
Yeah.
I think to add from the UK perspective, I think, in the UK, we've had our fair share of, whatever you want to call it, Hindu phobia, anti-Hindu sentiments, whatever the terminology we can decide later. But that aggression that Rudraji you were talking about. And so I think what's important as well is to realize that sometimes the best form of showcasing, demonstrating is just to live by those values, right? Keep living by those values that we inherently believe in, but we know it's also right for others. And show the good work. I think that's sometimes a good thing is we sort of shy away from, the good stuff that we do. And we don't like to, have a big demonstration of, oh, wow, look at these Hindu values. And I guess in a way, that's sort of what Hindu Heritage Month is actually, no, let's look at these Hindu values and let's learn from them. And I think just showcasing to the world, to the society, to your country, whatever that medium is, it's important because what it means is these values are tried and tested, right? That's what we're showcasing, that these values aren't new. They're not 10 years old. They're not 20 years old. They're the ancient values that have been tried and tested. And all we're doing and all we are is just the newest iteration of this software, if you want to call it, right? We're the newest versions of Hindu Dharma. And this is what we can offer. And hopefully one day a better version will come along and surpass us. And I think carrying on that tradition is important as well of bettering ourselves. Because we have to adapt. We have to adapt to different societies, different environments. And our Dharma teaches us to do exactly that. And so when these aggressions come along, I think they're hopefully, it's sort of new. They're more, they come and go. They come and go. But that trend generally of the society's well-being, of Hindu Dharma, of our values, should be hopefully on an upwards trend. And I think loads of factors in the world are helping that. And definitely in the last, I think in the last 5 years, we've seen definitely, especially in the UK, a big uptake, especially in the youth, of practicing our values, practicing our Dharma. And it's not necessarily going to the mandir every day or every week, right? And I think social media has enabled a lot of that as well, of actually, you see TikToks, Instagram Reels, etc., of explaining our Dharma. And I think we're going back to that part of, actually, we do all of these customs and rituals, but what is the reasoning why? What is the values? What does it teach us? And I think now we're unlocking that more and more, which will help us fight the aggressions that we're seeing.
I think that's a fair point. I want to just touch on, unless someone has anything else to add, but I want to just touch on something you brought up about adaptations. Obviously there are some adaptations that kind of come naturally, right? Like, the Bhakti period, a lot of people decided, hey, Hinduism's really complicated. Let's kind of, simplify it down for the mass. And I think that was a great, adaptation that came for everyone. But there are certain other things, that come up that are more forced adaptations. For example, in the US, myself and the India students, one of the experience I had in his hometown actually was that because a lot of time Diwali or Holi or something would fall on a school day, all the festivals, despite the tithi and the astrological significance, would just be moved to Saturday, Sunday. So how do we make these adaptations to ensure our culture survives while also not losing the heart of the traditions?
Happy to start off, Rutvij, bhai.
But
So I think it's a tricky one. It's a difficult one because of the nature of society. And again, I think especially like Bhavyaji in the UK, South Africa is also predominantly a Western type society. Sometimes what we call there's these hard constraints that you work within. So, for example, I can just relate something personally. I'm a youth member of the Ramakrishna mission, and the mission in the South African chapter. And I think you'll find this across many of the other religious movements in South Africa. So there's the Sri Satya Sai movement, the Chinmaya mission, and many others. I think what happens is, if you look at the Hindu festivals, if you take Navaratri or you take Ram Navami or any of the main festivals, typically the Tithi birthdays or the Tithi days are still observed on the days they are. And I think lots of the children and the youth are aware of these things. Unfortunately, our governments have not, for example, given those as a public holiday. For example, the Diwali is not a public holiday in South Africa, not yet in any case, but that's something we'd like to see obviously changed in future. But again, we have to sort of work within these constraints. So I think typically it so happens, if something doesn't fall on a weekend, we can't really get around it. But what's important is that the auspicious days are still observed. So for example, if the Visarjan day on during Navaratri will fall on like a weekday, there will be a satsang on that particular day, even though it's a weekday. It won't be pushed out to another day or brought forward. It will be observed on that day. And I think what is also brilliant was during COVID, where a lot of the ashrams and temples were forced to close because of restrictions, lots of things went online and virtual. So people were still able to attend these holy festivals and occasions, but virtually. And I think that's also been something that I'm sure Bhavyaji and Nayanji might be able to comment, that similar activities were observed in their countries.
Bhaveji, Nayanji.
Right. So I definitely agree with what Chetanji was saying. But on this point of like cultural denigration, like how our identity slowly gets erased. So something I found out recently was that the state of New York has actually recognized Diwali as a holiday. So, I'm reminded of the quote, history doesn't jump, it crawls. So the progress of all these things, it happens very slowly, but it does happen nevertheless. So I personally, as you mentioned, I'm an intern at Hindu Pact, right? And the goal of that is to use, government action, legislative change to bring about the Hindu world that we want to see, or the Hindu values that we want to see in the world, to be more accurate. So on this idea of how, governments, or at least these Western countries, may not exactly recognize these holidays, it's something that touches a note with me, right? Because, it's Diwali, it's on a Monday, and you have to go to school. It's like, no, I want to stay home and celebrate with my family, and, light diyas and do all these things. So, it definitely touches a note. But by using, I think, our governments, our respective governments, going to our Congress and saying, this is something that matters to us, we truly can incite change.
Yeah, and definitely agree with both Nayanji and Chetanji, especially about, I guess this example of, the days and tithis. Agree with both. And I think there is work to be done on that front of increasing awareness within our own governments, institutions, etc. From personal experience, like, I volunteer for the National Hindu Students Forum. So we serve Hindu students predominantly at university. And so most universities understand that Diwali is obviously an auspicious occasion, an important festival, and therefore they're okay with Hindu students taking leave. But that also applies to Jewish students when they have holidays, Muslim students when they have Eid, etc., whatever religious festivals. And so I think the UK, in that sense, especially within the academic institutions, are a bit more flexible. Not all, but most. But I've probably give another perspective as well of, when we're talking about adaptation as a wider point is, I think we have to be, and definitely, I don't know the answers to it, but we have to be, I guess, smart in the way that we do practice our values and festivals. So if we're sticking with this example of, do we observe Diwali on Diwali Day or when it's most suitable for us or whatever other religious festival is? Well, if we have to go to work or we have to go to school on that day, can we still not take Diwali with us? Can I not celebrate Diwali? Yes, maybe I can't do a whole Lakshmi Puja at work, fine. But I can still take some mithai and I can still celebrate my work colleagues without forcing. But you can generally raise awareness, right? And I love to do that, right? British people love Indian sweets. So taking some mithai and bendazi, gaju katri, whatever it is, and just letting them know today's Diwali, a small blog post that can be mailed around. But I think these are things that we can actively do as Hindus of just raising awareness. And I think like Nayan Ji said, that in turn will slowly influence change. You do that for 3-4 years at a workplace, they'll realize, oh, okay, when's Diwali this year? Let's do something. Let's hold something as a organization today, as a company today. Maybe that will then move on to the local council, etc. And we have that in the UK, especially predominantly where the Hindu populations are big, Leicester and London. We see massive Diwali processions, etc. Streets are closed, whatnot, funded by the local council. So things like this can happen, but like it said, it does take time. And the other thing about adaptation, I guess, in a wider sense beyond this example is really, I don't really know how to answer that question. And I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question of how does our dharma adapt? Who has to make those calls? How do we, who are the philosophers that are evolving our thought processes, right? It's a tough question. I guess it's a deep-rooted question as well of actually how does Hindu dharma evolve as a whole, right? And where do we need to evolve? What are the things that maybe might be problematic in modern day society that maybe we might need to revisit? What are those things? Let's have those intellectual debates, discussions, and definitely this age group is a perfect age group to do it. Whilst we're at university, talking about sexuality, talking about mental health, illness, etc. All of these stigmas that, especially in the Western society, but also the Eastern society, are present. What does our dharma have to teach about it, if anything? And in what sense does it need to adapt, if it needs to? Right? But again, who makes those calls? How those discussion happens? I think we all sort of have to play a hand in it of making sure that there is a safe space for us to talk, that we're not so strict on we have to do this and we're not going to change it forever. And I think that's the wrong approach. And in the Dharma, we pride ourselves in being scientific in many senses. So let's move with the times where we need to, and let's have those intellectual discussions and debates where we need to.
I think that's a fair point. I think to dive back into Hindu values, one of the big Hindu values is this idea of flexibility and change and tolerance and acceptance. Really, I mean, one of the things that we saw was the reason that I'd say Hinduism survived when a lot of other religions didn't was because we were accepting. When the Yavanas or Greeks came in, we took a lot of their traditions, they took some of ours, right? When the Chinese came in, we took some of their traditions, they took some of ours. When a lot of these groups came in, even when the Muslims came in, I mean, my father, my grandmother, they grew up going to Sufi dargahs, and they considered them, people that taught good things, just like, Hindu sons and all of those taught good things. So I think that's important. As long as, we stay within the general guidelines, I think that's important. The Hindu values are a set of guidelines that allow us to change without abandoning, the dharma that we stand for, without making it into basically, as they do in the United States, a Bollywood fest. So with that, I think it was a really good panel. I'd love to get just a small closing statement from each one of you. Chetanji, you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you. I think, and maybe also just touching a little bit on your previous point, I think, as Hindus, yes, we believe in tolerance. We believe in non-violence, like we've mentioned previously, but at the bottom of all of this is strength. And I think, as a people and as, if you look back just over the last millennia and the rich traditions of our yogis and our rishis, and throughout this whole period of and passage of time, strength and courage is really at the heart of it. And I think that's something that really we should be proud of as Hindus, and it really sets us apart from the rest of the world. And then I also want to say that I think it's so important that all Hindus should read the works of Swami Vivekananda. I think there's so much power and wisdom in the words of Swamiji, and especially for us as youth. I think there's so much strength that we can take from this. And one of the key things Swamiji says is that I'm a child of the universe. I'm not a Hindu, I'm not an Indian, I'm a child of the universe. And personally, that's something that I've really taken into my life. And I find that even when we live in these Western countries and these different societies that aren't necessarily Bharat, we need to remember that just being a Hindu is not a box. The nature of our religion and our philosophy is encompassing. And, Swamiji also used to say, service to man is worship of God. And that's also such a powerful statement because, when you serve others, doesn't matter what religion, what race, what creed, caste they may come from, that is the core of Hinduism, where we are all one people. It's just, it's oneness and unity. And I think in this world that has so much division and strife and conflict, especially our generation needs to remember these core values. And then we need to impart that to our children. And I think that's how, we can ensure that this culture and this tradition is carried forward to following generations. And I think the remaining goodness will just come through as a result of that. So if we live our lives in this way, the success will come. And if we just look at all our different countries and success Hindus have achieved, I think it bears testament to this fact. That's all I will say for now.
Definitely. I can't remember which Upanishad it's from, but there's a shloka ayam japayo veti ganuna laguchetasam udaya jaidanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam, that the entire world is one family. I think if we treat them like it, that's really the utmost example of our Hindu values. And so, Bhavyaji, with that, your closing statement.
Yes. First of all, I think, Hindu Heritage Month has been absolutely pleasure to be a part of from the UK, and especially for the National Hindu Students Forum. And I think what it's taught us above all is that, all of us are part of this unbroken lineage of our Hindu Dharma, which is centuries, millenniums old. And I guess each of us in our own sense are shaping that landscape of what it means to be a Hindu in our respective countries. What does it mean to be a Hindu that actively contributes to make sure that society's well-being is looked after? And I think that responsibility that we have all taken on, either willingly, unwillingly, I think that's empowering, that's inspiring. And seeing, all of the countries that have taken part on Hindu Heritage Month, but also this panel, it reminds me personally that, we have a legacy to build and carry on, right? We have to continue to strive for the best for humanity, like Chetanji said. And our Hindu values at its core can give us and unlock a lot of potential for us. And when I mean us, I mean, everyone in society. And so again, I guess in a modern day context, equivalating our dharma to sustainability, right? And well-being. How can we be sustainable, but also increase our well-being? And that, trend we were talking about going upwards, but not just taking ourselves as Hindus along with that ride, but everyone. We want the best for everyone and our societies. And overall, our goal as Hindus is to live a harmonious and peaceful life and to see our world enriched by Dharma. And I think Hindu Heritage Month has shown us that, we should be able to showcase these values openly, and often we don't. But it's been an honor to be a part of it. Dhanyawad, thank you very much.
Bhavyaji, it's been an honor to be working with you as well. Nayanji, if you want to close us out.
Definitely. So Ritaji, JG, thanks for having me here. Obviously, very enlightening to have a discussion with everyone on this panel, very different perspectives. Well, my closing statement I want to make about us as a youth community, right? So Bhavyaji was talking about, how does this change start? Where should it start? And he was saying, an important message of, is it even for us to decide how it should happen? But I think by just having this inherent discussion, we are then being the change that we want to see. Just by talking about this, we are starting this change, and we are truly forging the way for the future Hindu community. So now going to what JG said, right? We want to have the United Nations have it recognize Hindu Heritage Month by 2030. And I think setting goals like this for the future that we can all sort of look up to and say, we should all do this. We should bring the human Hindu community upwards, right? Make it better than the way we found it. That's a very important goal to set, and it's a very important mindset to have. Those are my thoughts.
Definitely. Well, it's been a pleasure with all of you on this panel. It's again really great to hear these diverse experiences. So with that, as we end this Hindu Heritage Month, let's take a small look towards the future. In the United States, I can tell you, we've had a lot of organizations. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad and Hindu Pact took the lead in getting a lot of the proclamations, but there were also sizable contributions from the Hindu American Foundation, from Kona. We also had other organizations contribute in their own respective ways. We had Samskrita Bharati do a Hindu tradition every day in the Sanskrit language to be able to promote the understanding of our universal mother tongue in that sense. And we also had from the United States, due to the leadership of Hindu Pact and various Bengali organizations, we had a bill actually placed in the House of Representatives to recognize the 1971 Bengali genocide. So looking forward, we are eager to fighting to get that passed to make sure that the struggles of Hindus all over the world are recognized. And we're eager to make sure that this time, we had a decent amount of states. I think we had 25. Next year, from the United States, I would really love to see all 50. So with that, we actually had quite a few other countries with us. Canada and Guyana, for example, were here, but it seemed that they couldn't be here. Shreyaji from Canada suffered an ear injury, so unfortunately, she can't join us, but she's so dedicated. She actually sent in a video for us to watch. So I'd like to play that for you just so that you guys can see what Canada was doing.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Shreya Mahasenan from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I'm pleased to be joining in the Hindu Heritage Month closing ceremonies. I'd like to give my heartfelt congratulations to all the groups from the many different countries who've worked together to make this a joyous and successful month for celebrating Hindu heritage and values. I'm originally from the United States, but I'm a student at McGill University in Canada, and I've lived in Canada for just under 4 years now. In the last 2 years especially, I've been able to work with many different groups of Canadian Hindus, not only to create a collaborative community of Hindus across Canada, but also to educate the wider public about Hinduism and all that it has to offer. Last year, I was part of a group of students that formed the McGill Dharma Society, McGill University's first and only campus organization for Hindu students, as well as students of other Dharmic faiths. Earlier this year, we managed to make the Dharma Society an official full-status club here at McGill. And we've managed to find many different and creative ways in which to celebrate Hinduism and to showcase it to the wider community here in Montreal. We've taken students on different trips to temples around the area. We've managed to create many intimate and heartfelt celebrations of our most beloved festivals that really aim to get at the spiritual essence of those festivals. And we've even held concerts to showcase the song, dance, and art that Hinduism has given us. It's been a very successful time for us here at the McGill Dharma Society. And earlier this year, after very intimate and personal celebrations of Navratri, we wanted to celebrate the intersection of Diwali and Hindu Heritage Month in a really special way. We talked a lot with other Hindu students here at McGill to ensure that we could really give students a sense of home. Many students come to McGill from abroad and want to feel that they can celebrate Diwali and their other Hindu traditions just as they do back home. We try to make as safe and welcoming of a community space as possible and aim to have an event to celebrate Diwali that really brought people together and brought back the spiritual essence of Diwali that underlies the vibrant celebrations that we all know and love. It was a very successful event, and it's been very rewarding bringing the Hindu community together here in Montreal and in McGill. In addition to working with the local community and even with other faith groups to educate the public about Hinduism, we also managed to work with other groups of Canadian Hindus. We've been very blessed to work with organizations such as the Chinmaya Mission in Toronto, as well as other Hindu student associations from Ontario, to create some province-to-province communication about what it means to be Hindu, why it means so much to us to be Hindu, and how we can continue to celebrate our traditions and values that we've inherited. It's been a very special and rewarding time for me. I'm very excited for the events and progress that these other organizations have made. And here at the Dharma Society, I look forward to the journey of continuing to form a space for Hindus to be proud of our traditions and to practice them in full swing. I want to offer, again, my very heartfelt congratulations to all the groups who've made this Hindu Heritage Month a success, and the very best to all those celebrating. It's been a very successful and fulfilling month for me, and I've been very blessed to be a part of it. Namaste.
Dhanyavad, Shreyaji. Alongside Shreyaji, we also had quite a few people from the Guyana. I know Chetanji said that he was one of the oldest Hindu groups, but I think Guyana may actually take the cake here. So I would like to play their video as well. It was sent to me just recently on WhatsApp. Apologies for the delay. 1 minute.
Namaskar and Shubh Hindu Heritage Month. I'm Panidev from Guyana, and I'm very happy to be a part of your many activities. As you know, that Guyana itself has a huge Hindu population, and we ourselves have been doing our part to ensure that Hinduism is being preserved. And I want to commend the efforts of the organizers to ensure that these activities and to ensure that Dharma itself flourishes in this part of the world. For me, Hindu Heritage Month has lots of meaning. And as you know, for those who've been following the works in Guyana, there are so many activities going on. So, for example, for Diwali itself, we had a Diwali motorcade, we had Rangoli competition, and we had Deep Jalai, which was evening to usher in Diwali celebration. And even at the level of my youth group, which I'm a part of, there are so many things that we have been doing, raising awareness and activities. So I want to wish the organizers and everyone all the best and keep on doing the good work and to ensure that Sanatan Dharma name is held in high esteem. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Devda ji, we also had Jyotika ji from South Africa. She wasn't able to join, so I would like to invite Chetan Yamlal ji to speak on her behalf.
Sure. Thank you, Ji. So the message I'll present is from Dr. Jyotireka Premraj ji, who was one of the leaders of the Hindu Heritage Month movement in South Africa for this year. Unfortunately, due to some family commitments, she's unavailable to make it, but I will present the message. Namaskar, Namaste, and Vanakkam to all respected guests and online participants who have evinced keen interest and appreciation for our rich Hindu heritage and traditions by sharing your time with us at this closing ceremony of Hindu Heritage Month. I am indeed elated to be amongst such an august assembly of Hindus and cultural enthusiasts joining us today from around the globe. Heartfelt gratitude goes to Risha ji and Rutvik ji for inviting South Africa to participate in Hindu Heritage Month. Your efforts to promote October as Hindu Heritage Month globally is truly commendable. Here in South Africa, the Ramakrishna Center of South Africa, the Chinmaya Mission South Africa, Divine Life Society, Tongat Hindu Unity Forum, Sri Satya Sai Organization, Art of Living, and many other Hindu organizations, together with all local Hindu temples, observe Navaratri and Diwali in the month of October. For Navaratri, the Chinmaya Mission South Africa had daily chanting of Lalita Sahasranam. The Durban Hindu Temple had daily recital of Durga Saptashati and Havan. At the Ramakrishna Mission, we also had Durga Saptashati Havan, and the Siddham Sanatan Dharmam Vishnu Mandir had Durga Saptashati recital together with explanations and meanings during the entire 9 days of Navaratri. Diwali festivals and fairs were held at different venues in Durban, which was organized by the South African Hindu Mahasabha, the Sarva Dharma Ashram, and the Tongaat Hindu Unity Forum. Both the Ramakrishna Center of South Africa and Tongaat Hindu Unity Forum held a Vedanta retreat for children and youth, which was very well received. At the Ramakrishna Mission South Africa, the children's retreat included bhajans and kirtans, hatha yoga and meditation, an art class, a practical lesson on how to start a garden and thus create environmental awareness, and a talk by our revered Swami Swatma Ramanandaji Maharaj. Swamiji is the president of the Ramakrishna Center of South Africa. The World Hindu Federation, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, HSS, and Seva International South Africa also had an event to celebrate Hindu Heritage Month. South Africa celebrated the second International Bindi and Tilak Day on the 15th of October as part of the Heritage Month celebrations. This event was initiated and organized by the Hinduism Worldwide Inc., which is an NPO registered in the UK with the aim of uniting Hindus from different organizations and linguistic groups globally. There are over 30 supporting organizations globally. The online global forum had speakers and significant numbers of participants from the UK, South Africa, USA, Canada, and many others. The supporting organizations included ISKCON in South Africa, the Tongaat Hindu Unity Forum, and the Stonebridge Mariamman Temple. Everyone, including many fourth and fifth generations expats, were proudly seen displaying the Bindi and Tilak with pride. The International Bindi and Tilak Day became a common platform for sharing and expressing oneness in the Indian diaspora, thus fulfilling the aims to promote Hindu unity through the Bindi and Tilak, make Hindu identity an accepted norm, and proudly use the Bindi and Tilak every day. Honorable Shri Tejasvi Suryaji was one of the main supporters of this Tilak Day. Mrs. Raj Bansi, a Hindu politician and leader of one of the leading Indian political parties, the Minority Front, also supported the Bindi and Tilak Day campaign. There can be no better investment in our future than ensuring that our rich Hindu heritage and traditions are bequeathed to our younger generation. These Hindu traditions and values are absolutely nation building that shape and can shape a just and moral society. My sincere prayer is that we continually work together to strengthen our efforts in this regard. It's an honor and privilege to share this platform with you all. I lovingly invite all organizations involved in Hindu Heritage Month to also join in the International Bindi and Tilak Day on October 15th next year. Thank you and Hari Om from South Africa.
Dhanyavad Chetanji. Always a pleasure to hear Jyotiji's voice and yours as well. Bhavyaji, if you could close us out.
Yes. So from the UK, a lot was done in terms of what we did for Hindu Heritage Month, but the main two activities that we did was Diwali on Trafalgar Square. So if you know London, Diwali on Trafalgar Square, important occasion to celebrate Diwali with the people of London. So that's hosted by the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, as well as the Diwali in London Committee, in which we as the National Hindu Students Forum sit on. So we had a stall to share and have an exhibition to showcase our Hindu values, but also our timeline of Hindus in Britain, but also our contributions. So coupling together where our journey started and how it is going with, in that journey, what have we done for Britain? And a great reminder for us of how our values have impacted, again, us as British, in British society for the better. I think it's also great to see, October, as we said, so packed with Navratri as well. So having student Navratris across the 4 regions in the UK saw over 2,000 students come together in total to celebrate Ma Shakti and our divine feminine energy that we worship and remind ourselves during Navratri, the teachings of Durga Ma. And so all of this together, I think, in this month, what has happened to us is that energy level within us as youths and society has risen. I was connectiveness to our dharma or spirituality has also risen, but also to the rest of the society, increased presence of Hindus. And of course, the UK has other headlines as well, with Rishi Sunak becoming prime minister. But I think overall, the Hindu Heritage Month has been a good reminder for me personally that we should continue to serve our society.
Dhanyawad, Bhavya ji. And with that, we officially close out our Hindu Heritage Month for this year. Before we close, I'd like to just quickly thank 5 groups very quickly. First of all, Jai Dhanyawad so much for inviting me to join this initiative. Truly, working with all these people from all over the world, it's an experience I've never had before, and probably most gratifying one I've had up to this point in my life. I hope to spend many more years working with you on this initiative to just make it grander and greater than ever before. Second, I'd also like just to thank the Vishwa Hindu Parishad at large. They were the ones that initially formulated this idea that now is there in all 5 continents. And truly, if the VHP alongside the other big Hindu organizations in the United States, like the Hindu American Foundation, Coalition of Hindus of North America, had not come together and made it so that we had gotten such a rousing, welcome to this Hindu Heritage Month during the first annual Hindu Heritage Month, then we probably would not have the base to do anywhere near the celebrations that we did this year. I'd also like to give a heartfelt thanks to our entire youth team. You see Bhavya ji on here right now from there, but we also had many other Shreya ji, Devdat ji, Dvija ji, Ritu ji, Kushal ji, and all the others that I just cannot name at this point. But you guys all worked so hard for the last few months, got everything set up. Many of you worked in countries where Hindu Heritage Month, just wasn't a thing yet. Worked under time deadlines and time constraints, worked with groups that just, weren't necessarily set up yet, with, for example, Kushal ji, he literally set up his Hindu students group. And then after that, we just threw him into Hindu Heritage Month. So it was truly, you guys all worked so hard. And yes, my pranams to all of you. I'd also like to thank all our panelists for being here, Nayan ji, Chetan ji, Bhavya ji again. It was truly, you made this event great. We had a great discussion, and I am certain that our audience enjoyed it just as much as I did. And the last thing, I'd also just like to thank from not only myself, I think on behalf of all of us, all of our rishis, acharyas, sons, all of our kshatriyas, all of our ancestors that fought to keep our dharma alive, because, well, without them, without their intellectual sacrifices, without their, money, without their time, without their blood, without their sweat, without their tears, none of this, nothing that we have done in these recent years would have been possible. So with that, I know Bhavya ji, you brought up innovation. Traditionally, we end with, a simple Shanti mantra like Sana Avavtu, Sana Ubanaktu, Saviryam Kai Bhavai, Tejasna Abditamstu, Ma Vidishabhahe, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. But this time we figured we'll do something new. So why don't we instead end with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad theme song that doubles as a Shanti mantra. Jai ji, I'll let you take that away. And
Thank you. Just one minor correction. It's actually Hindu Heritage Month theme song. We certainly were involved in making it happen, but this has been all prepared for us from scratch by a very prominent, music composer. His name is Dr. Kanikeshwaram. He's very well known. He's all over the YouTube with some really wonderful videos, and this one is really very close to my heart because it just speaks to the values of our culture and brings out some of the wonderful traditions from our Hindu culture. So with that, let me start it.
दीपज्योति परब्रह्म दीपज्योतिर्जनार्दनः दीपो मे हरतु पापं दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते शुभं करोति कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदा शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्तिः
चिदानन्दमेकमिदम्
एकं शतनामम् अनेकं शतरूपम्
अनाद्यम् अनन्तम् अपारम् चिदानन्दमेकं वन्दे असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय ॐ शान्तिः ॐ शान्तिः ॐ शान्तिः कोऽहं सोऽहं कोऽहं सोऽहम् सेहं नाहं देहं नाहं कोऽहं सोऽहं देहं नाहं प्रज्ञानं ब्रह्मा अहं ब्रह्मास्मि तत्त्वमसि अयमात्मा ब्रह्मा ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वम् ईशावास्यम् इदं सर्वं वसुधैव कुटुम्बकं वसुधैव कुटुम्बकं
वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम्
वसुधैव कुटुम्बकं स्वदेशो भुवनत्रयम् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतं
And with that, we officially end this year's Hindu Heritage Month. From all of us at the Hindu Heritage Month team, Dhanyavad and Namaste.